What if the Left 4 Dead 2 survivors ran into Ellis's best friend, Keith? That is what we're going to be talking about in today's episode of Left 4 Dead 2 What If. This is going to be more of a feel-good episode. This one doesn't necessarily have to revolve around plot or narrative, but it's more rather just for funsies. So if you guys end up enjoying today's episode, please drop a like. For those of you guys that are new to this series, though, welcome. My name is John, or Black Ninja, and essentially what this series is that this is inspired by the Marvel What If series that is produced by Disney, except that we apply it to the story and the logic of Left 4 Dead, where we just take a story or a gameplay elements and we just simply ask the question, what if? What if X, Y, and Z were different? And if so, what exactly would take place? Normally this revolves around storyline, but like I said, just thought it would just be fun to just do more of a lighthearted one by just simply asking what would happen if Keith came back and how that would affect the gameplay and or the story. But yeah guys, with all that being said, let's end up doing another episode of Left 4 Dead 2 What If. Now, when we bring up this topic, the very first thing I want to bring up is going to be the initial interaction, because this is probably going to be the big thing that's going to happen, the big shock and awe. And I can tell you this, is that the moment that they end up meeting, Ellis and Keith are going to have a giant reunion. Ellis is going to be more giddy than a teenage girl going to a Justin Bieber concert back in the early 2010s. He is going to be extremely happy, and it's probably going to end up driving Nick up a wall. So after Ellis is done fangirling and Nick is done trying to end up debating whether or not he wants to commit mass genocide, there would end up being a proposition being made. Whether or not that Keith would stick around or if they would go separate ways. Now, the survivors would end up having to call a vote because obviously it has to be majority rule. So automatically, Ellis and Nick, we already know what their choice is going to be. Nick's going to probably say no way, and Ellis is probably going to be heck yes. So Rochelle and Coach are going to be mostly the deciding factors. Now, when it comes to this, I would like to believe that Rochelle and Coach's opinion is going to be dictated about whether or not that Keith is just simply a good person. Now, of course, they trust Ellis, and with him being his best friend, I would like to believe that as long as Keith hasn't, changed during the zombie apocalypse, which I doubt he has, I'm pretty sure that they welcome him in, minus the really weird and, funny stories that they kind of just recite to each other. So for me personally, what I would like to believe what would happen is that Ellis would be all for Keith, Nick would be initially all against Keith, and Rochelle and Coach would probably end up being the deciding factor, which would end up making so that way Keith would end up joining eventually, and then therefore Nick would just kind of have to accept him and tolerate him, kind of like how he does with Ellis, because Nick can't just get rid of everybody he doesn't like, otherwise he would be completely alone. So Nick has to just deal with the people that are good, even though they might annoy him, and then that's how you end up getting your little group together. Alright, so now what happens when the hype ends up dying down and the dust settles and the characters are initially past that first, oh my god, so good to see you phase, or oh my god, I can't believe you're real phase? Well, it's basically what's going to end up happening is we're going to cut straight into what I like to call story time, which is basically going to be where Ellis and Keith mostly, but also some of the other survivors as well, share their stories about basically what happened since they saw each other last. Their different survival stories, who they met, exactly what happened throughout their lives until they finally saw each other again. So Keith is probably going to end up having his own crew, his own survivors that he ended up hanging out with, and his own different experiences that he can share with us. And then Ellis can recite all the prior things that ended up happening with him. Now, when I imagine this, I'm also imagining this being sometime in between the parish and then also just any other given map. You can say, if you want to, it can take place in between Coldstream, or maybe even just say, let's make Coldstream canon, and they meet there. Who knows? But let's just say that they end up meeting sometime around there. So you can end up talking about Dead Center, you can talk about Dark Carnival, Swamp Fever, Hard Rain, Parish, etc. That can be a whole entire, few days to explain all those different stories, and even the ones we never even did see. Now, I would like to believe that there's nothing really bad that would come up between either group. However, though, there probably would be some things here or there that Keith would do and Ellis would do would make them question reality, and just being like, wow, we've actually managed to survive basically a shit show. And there's gonna be a lot of feels, and I could definitely see bonding and Nick and maybe almost empathizing with Keith and sort of kind of relating to him. Or hypothetically, you could even go the one other direction, which would be that you find out that Keith is not as fond as Ellis thought he was, and he looks upon him kind of more harshly, because let's say that Keith did some horrible things. Let's just say Keith killed people. Let's just say that he ended up not really doing a lot of good things during the apocalypse, and he's not exactly a good person. Let's just say that the only real thing that they have going for Keith is just the fact that Ellis knows him. So if anything were to happen with Keith being bad, it would be up to Ellis to really make that judgment and that call, basically clarifying of whether or not that this is who Keith used to be, or if this is just something that is just a given, just being in the apocalypse, and this is how Keith exactly dealt with it, you know what I mean? Now let's just say, for the sake of context, what if Keith wasn't alone when he stumbled upon the Left 4 Dead 2 crew? What if he ended up having his own survivor group? Now this would be a slightly different interaction in my opinion, because if Keith was just by himself, I feel like Ellis would immediately recognize him, and then therefore there would just be like no tension, everything would just diffuse. But if there was another set of survivors with Keith, then you would end up having a little bit of initial tension, because Keith might not be recognized right away, or he might not be the first person everyone sees, and then therefore there's that initial hesitancy. Although the group could be friendly like the Left 4 Dead 1 crew was, and there's not exactly any tension, but I'm thinking more like with Walking Dead mind, where like all the characters in that game are kind of somewhat hostile towards each other until they can feel out the situation. That's just kind of how I'm imagining it. But there could be the possibility that Keith's group is just really friendly. In fact, if you want to get a little bit creative, you can even do something kind of funny where you end up having all of his other members in his group be other figures that we know about, such as like Virgil or some of the Midnight Riders members, or even the Left 4 Dead 1 crew if you want to go that far. That would be kind of interesting, and I think that'd be really cool, to be honest. Having it be like, oh my god, you know Virgil? That's fucking sick! Now guys, even though all this is absolutely wonderful, before we wrap up today's video, I want to end up addressing one more thing, and that is going to end up being the ending. Now, initially at the beginning I didn't bring this up because a lot of you guys will probably be like, ending? What ending? I'm bringing up this because this is something that we need to address before we wrap up the video, is going to be the ending. Since the game doesn't exactly end up having us ever meet Keith, we have to just kind of make this up on our own. So in our fictional story here, what would end up being the way that Keith and Ellis's reunion would end? Would they end up parting ways? Would they end up sticking together forever? Would they even go as far as killing each other? How exactly would this story end? Now, I would like to personally believe that there's three main endings on how this can go. The good ending, the bad ending, and then kind of like the neutral ending, which just basically just starts the slate clean. So let's talk about all of these. The first one is going to end up being the bad ending, which probably is going to be the one that nobody wants to talk about, but we need to, address the elephant in the room. So let's talk about the bad ending. So if I were to imagine a very bad ending, this would probably be that Ellis and Keith don't see eye to eye anymore, and both of their groups kind of go to a mini war. This war could be about anything. It could be about territory, it could be about supplies, it could even be about just sheer beliefs, about not agreeing about something with someone. And this would be the most sad ending in my opinion, because it would probably result in a death. And for the sake of making it easy, and plus also the fact that I think Val would end up doing this anyway, it probably would involve Ellis having to kill his best friend Keith. Now that's the bad ending, and I know a lot of people don't want to talk about this probably, it sounds very sad, but that is something that you could have for a what-if scenario. Okay, now let's bring up the neutral ending. Now the neutral ending is not going to exactly be the most cheerful either, however though this is still better than having somebody get killed or something. So let's just say, for the sake of the neutral ending, that Keith and Ellis don't exactly see eye to eye anymore, but this doesn't result them in killing each other. Instead, they just part ways. Let's just say that the groups don't click, and for better or for worse, they just decide that, hey, you know what? This isn't working out. We should leave. I'm sorry, Ellis. We have to leave you. I'm sorry, Keith. We have to leave you. This just isn't going to work anymore. So they end up saying their goodbyes, and then they end up not seeing each other probably ever again, just because in the zombie apocalypse, death is very imminent, and it's a very real possibility, so any day could be your last. So that also means that if you part ways with somebody, the chances of stumbling upon them a second time like that, probably never going to happen again. So this would probably be a final goodbye to Keith, but at least that this would be closure though, because they would do this on their terms. So that is at least a good thing. And then finally, we end up having the good ending, which is, of course, my personal favorite. So for the good ending, this is going to be that Keith and any people that are with him, at least Keith, are going to just stay with Ellis and the Left 4 Dead 2 crew. And they survive for as long as they survive. This can be all the way up until they eventually get killed by zombies. This can be all the way up until they end up getting killed by other survivors. But regardless of what they do and for how long they do it, they will end up dying on their terms, and they will die being with their best friends, once again. But yeah, guys, that is going to be another episode of Left 4 Dead 2 What If, and I hope you guys end up enjoying. And if you did, please consider dropping a like, comment, and subscribe, and all that beautiful stuff. If you guys would like to check out the last What If episode that I ended up doing, there will be a link down below in the description and a end card on screen. It would be about what if the Left 4 Dead zombie apocalypse or green flu ended. So I think you guys will definitely get a kick out of that, so make sure you check that out. If you guys would also like to financially support the channel, I tremendously appreciate if you guys could go check out my Patreon. It's always linked down below in all my YouTube video descriptions, or you guys could use supporter creator code BlackNinja797 in all caps in the Fortnite Epic Games item shops, because Epic is my very first sponsor and they're sponsoring today's video, so shout out to Epic Games. But yeah, guys, I hope you end up enjoying seeing another YouTube video from the most unique YouTubers are ever going to see. Thanks for watching, guys. I love you, and peace out.
Hey, meme lords, Jesus here. And you better have enjoyed that video there by the eternal god Daddy Ninja. You should probably subscribe too, or the mighty Moab will come for your balls. If you enjoyed the video, you might like it too. And give me the memes. Flash, bang, boom!